Like I said before, I've been in this a long time, but my opinion, being a personal opinion, is no better or worse than yours. It's just my personal opinion, and yours are what really matters. So with that in mind, it is a presentation about PPE with the emphasis on you. And we do a little diagram here to tell you in a very short period of time what we think is the focus and what's most important. Of course, the important part is making sure that you're safe. It's something that we focus on primarily for you. The next thing I think we should talk about is performance. Make sure that we're meeting your expectations and your specification, if you will. And then, of course, we can't forget the dollar sign, because this is expensive product. It's an investment, and we have to make sure that we show premium value, because you don't want to pay too much. But of course, there's a risk in paying too little as well. We think that these three things are of primary importance, and of course, everybody's familiar with NFPA, and a few may be familiar with the EN standard, the European standard. And underneath this standard, the NFPA, of course, we have TPP and THL. And I'm happy to speak to all those different NFPA criteria if it's something that's important to you. Again, I want to make sure that I'm meeting your expectations. But prior to that, what I'd like to mention is that we recognize that you folks are in the fire longer periods of time, longer quantity air bottles, so even up to overhaul. You may be in this turnout gear. So recognizing that, and on top of that, you're not just firefighters. As far as proximity or entry firefighters go, you're working with EMT products or exposures. You're involved in sometimes hazmat, sometimes just directing traffic in very hot weather. So you're firefighters and then some. What I'm getting at is, with all that in mind, we at MSA and Globe are focused on a couple different things very closely. One is toxins. What you're coming in contact with. You know better than I that you're coming in contact in a structural fire, not with wood and cardboard and things like that, like you used to have. You're coming in contact with a lot of plastics, a lot of man-made products that, when they burn, turn into carcinogens. And you're an expert on that. So I don't need to explain much more about it, but we want to keep you safe from the toxins as best we can. Another one that we've been dealing with for years, and I think equal to the toxin challenge, is cardio. We know it's a fact that more firefighters perish in the field due to cardio-related activities or emergencies such as heart attacks, heat stress, stroke, than any other problem that you run into. So let me talk for a minute, if I may, about some of the things that we at Globe do differently than others to meet the toxin challenge, and also to meet the cardio challenge. Because even though where we've been for the last 20 or 30 years that I've been around is important, and we're going to meet all those existing and sometimes people would consider them antiquated criteria, what we're trying to do here is move beyond that and keep you safe, going in a different direction as to what we see worldwide now in the trends. So, for instance, when we talk about comfort, comfort equates to safety. If you're going to feel good in this stuff, you're going to reduce your cardio exposure. Most of when you move in a set of turnout gear is happening here in the upper shoulders and in the arms. So we focus very closely on the the upper body. For instance, if I can get onto the screen this coat, you'll notice that, and this isn't probably a very good way to do it, but when I stand, my arm rests in a contoured position. That's the resting position of the human arm. One thing we do differently than others is we contour our sleeve to match that resting position of the human arm. It may not seem like a big thing. As a matter of fact, several of these things that I tell you may not seem like a huge issue taken separately, but when you combine them all, it comes up with a set of gear that reduces stress and helps your cardio position. So reducing the stress by matching the position of the arm is important to us. We also do a two-piece sleeve, and the reason I mention this is others don't. We do a piece here and a piece underneath, two seams. It's much less expensive to do one seam and wrap it around. We call that a stovepipe sleeve. But when you put the coat on and you bind, you bend like this, you find binding in the elbow. When you have two pieces, it gives a little because the seam will actually give more than the cloth will. So there's some movement there. Again, it equates back to lower stress in the garment. Another thing that we do that other manufacturers don't, and let's face it, that's why I'm here, is to compare what we do to others, is we grade the length of the sleeve. It's an anatomical fact that if you put your arms out like this, like I have here, and you measure middle fingertip to middle fingertip, you're going to measure about an inch or an inch and a half of your height. It's not rocket science, it's evolution. And the taller people have the longer arms. The shorter people, shorter legs, shorter arms. The reason I mention it is it's really important to have a graded sleeve. In other words, a different sleeve length for every individual size of the coat. And the reason it's important is because when you put the coat on, you don't want to have to worry that the sleeve is down here too low on your fingers, getting in the way. And you don't want to worry about it being up too high or having to put some sort of thumb loop in here to hold the sleeve down. Globe's very proud of the fact that we grade each sleeve to customize to the chest of the wearer. And lastly, and I know you're going to say this is an awful lot about the sleeve, but like I said, this is where you're moving in the gear, is up top here, not so much down around the waist. Lastly, this is what they call in the set of gear a set-in sleeve. And it's kind of complicated to explain, but if you can think of a raincoat, which is a raglan sleeve, your arm is heavy, the sleeve is heavy, and if you put that heavy arm and sleeve way up here on the shoulders, it causes stress up in the upper back in the shoulder area. What we do with our sleeve and what they call a set-in sleeve is we cut a hole in the top of the sleeve and set it in. That's why they call it set-in. So the muscles of the chest and upper back are supporting your sleeve and your arm rather than the smaller, weaker muscles up here on the shoulder. Real important from a stress-reducing standpoint. As far as the trousers go, on that same line, and again, I'm just mentioning a few things that we do differently than other manufacturers. We'll include in each one of our trousers an independent waistband. Notice that's separate. The reason we do that on every pair of pants is these pants are heavy, and we don't want any more weight or stress, again, attending to cardio resistance. We don't want any more of the stress to go to the shoulders where you're already quite encumbered with a set of turnout gear and perhaps a breathing apparatus. So what we're trying to do is just redistribute the weight of this trouser from the shoulders down here to the waist. And the only way to do that comfortably and do it effectively is to make sure that you have a completely independent waistband. The reason we mention it is many others don't do it. As a matter of fact, years and years ago, we didn't do it until we figured out that ergonomically it is correct. Many manufacturers take the liner and just snap it to the outer shell. There's no support there. It won't hold the pants up. So all the weight goes onto the suspenders. So from a stress reduction standpoint, we think that an independent waistband is very important. Now, when we talk about the value of a set of gear, it's very expensive. You know that 66 or 67% of the cost of this gear that I demonstrate here is in the materials. Not much we can do about that. You can buy cheaper materials from cheaper manufacturers, but Globe pretty much buys all of our product from a company called Tenkata, the old Southern Mills out of Peachtree City, Georgia. And we're proud of that because they are the leader in this industry, manufacturing, oh gosh, 70 or 75% of the thermal liners and the outer shells sold worldwide to firefighters. So we team up pretty closely with them, and although we can buy and do buy product from other people, we tend to lean towards the Tenkata products first. So 66% of the cost of the gear is in the cloth. So we can't get away from that, but what we can do with the cloth is meet this toxin and cardio challenge. Talking about the toxins for a moment, this is the Globe Guard interface in the crotch of the trouser, and this is the Globe Guard interface in the coat. We're finding that more and more people are worried about becoming sick years and years after they wear the gear for their careers because of the particulates that ended up on their skin when wearing the garments. So we're hoping, and we're finding from independent studies, particularly out of Boston Fire Department, Boston, Massachusetts, that these guards do serve a purpose in helping to stop the particulates from getting up onto the firefighter's skin. So what we're trying to do there is react to the toxin challenge. From a dollar standpoint, back to that point that I was making, I'd like to point out what we call a pillow stitch. This black area on the trim is called a pillow stitch. And what that 100% Kevlar substrate does is act as a pillow, if you will, for the stitching running down through the middle. Long story short, this increases the resistance to abrasion of the trim or the abrasion falling off or coming apart 7 times industry standard. Many manufacturers nobody else uses this pillow stitch. Many manufacturers will do 1 row of stitching. We tried that for a while. Then we tried 2 rows of stitching. Sometimes they would both come undone. So we invented a pillow stitch that increases the resistance not 2-fold, but 7 times. Again, it speaks to value, overall value. When the gear may cost a little bit more, you usually get what you pay for. One other thing that we're pretty proud of at Globe is, if you look at the seams here, if you put a ruler on our seam, you're going to measure 6 to 8 stitches per inch. Industry standard is 8 to 10. It's a stronger seam. We wouldn't do an 8 to 10 stitch per inch because it just is. It would save a little bit of money, but it's less thread and they are not as strong as a tighter stitched seam. This is a difficult to see. I couldn't see this very well on my preview, but in the crotch of the pant, see this little piece of Kevlar twill, or this little piece of material in the crotch of the trouser? It's a small thing, and for the life of me, I can't figure out why all manufacturers don't do it, because it's only a couple dollars that it costs to cut and stitch that little piece of twill material in. But it resists the abrasion and tear. It increases the tear resistance in the crotch, which I'm sure everybody listening has seen trousers tear at the crotch, because if you're not wearing them exactly at the waist where you need to, and you lift your leg up, it'll rip the crotch out sometimes. And also, this is a very vulnerable spot from a UV degradation standpoint. In other words, this trouser may be on a pair of boots and be down waiting at the fire station in the fire hall, waiting for a call, and a lot of ultraviolet rays may be coming down on it, whether they be fluorescent or bright sun, such as you would have in Trinidad or in the Caribbean, and it can rot. It can rot the material there, and it's a very high stress point. Again, this is a small thing, but I like to point it out because it's an example of how Globe builds their gear overall to be best value and to last for a long, long time. Just a couple more things that we do that are, highly different than other people is we'll put an independent binding all the way around the trouser waist and around the interface at the coat. A lot of manufacturers will simply roll it over and stitch it. They'll stitch it with something that the industry would call a surge stitch. This is a surge stitch, and it's okay for a pocket that's laying flat against the inside of the coat. But something where you have a raw edge for longevity, and again, going back to good value, we feel that it's important to go that extra step on all of these and put a flame-resistant cotton polyester neoprene-coated material all the way around the garment liners where they would receive the most stress. And I think I'll finish up with our suspender. This is something that we've been developing for years to find the best suspender in the industry. And there are many of them out there. You can buy them all over the catalogs or the internet. But I think what we've found here is we have the best suspender available in the market. It's a ripcord suspender, so you can get out of it quickly and get back into it. It'll hold tightly and not let go. It's padded, of course, over the shoulders. Again, the waistband is trying to get some of that stress from the suspender off your shoulders, but some people still use them. Some people don't. Some people will take them right out and use strictly the zipper or the Velcro and the belt as their positive closure. But leading into that, something I am most proud of is the fact that this suspender, the way it attaches to the trouser. Let me see if I can show you this. Most manufacturers will take a button and they'll put a button through here, and it'll hitch the suspender with a leather tab. We did that for many, many years, but the buttons rip out. And as a matter of fact, one manufacturer, kudos to them, they recognize that the button will rip out, so they send some extra buttons in a little plastic bag. And it's a good effort, but we thought we might be able to do a little bit better. So, when you cut through this with a steel button, it's high strength, high flame resistant material, but it's still material, warp and a fill. And you weaken it, so you have to reinforce it on the back side. It still rips out. What we did was decided to take a belt loop, see if I can get the light, here we go. Take a belt loop basically and turn it horizontally. And rather than rip the material, what we've done is we've reinforced it with a 24 count bar tack on both sides. And the byproduct is, rather than spending all night trying to get your suspenders on, if you want to take your suspenders off and on, you can just unsnap them and pull them through and then put them back on. So in closing, we could go, I have over the years gone on for hours talking about Globe Turnout gear. There are other design criteria that, yes, are worthy to talk about. For instance, this Velcro material. Did you know that Globe's the only manufacturer that doesn't buy their Velcro in a roll and stitch it on? We cut our own Velcro out of big sheets. Because I bet everybody on this WebEx has seen over the years the Velcro tear at the edges. Well, we did too. And we'd have to fix it because the label says Globe on it, even though it's a Velcro product. So what we do now is to stop the warranty problems, not only a cost to us, but a cost to you in taking the gear out of the field. What we do now is we cut our own Velcro. and we reinforce it on the edge as we cut it. I'm a sales guy, so I would tell everybody how they do it. So they won't tell me how it's done. But what we've done is we've eliminated a whopping 95% of our Velcro repair issues because we took some good innovation and changed the way the rest of the industry did it and do it a different way ourselves. So again, like I said, there's many other things that I could talk about, but really I can see here that I've gone about almost 30 or 20 or 30 minutes. And what I'd like to do is open it up maybe back to Brent and see what everybody thinks. And if they have some questions, I'm happy to answer them. And by the way, I'm happy to answer them about materials and about the NFPA, not much new there, or the industry as a whole. So please, fire away, Brent.
All right, Rick. My actual question is regarding warranty for the globe gear. What is the warranty, general warranty for the different gear?
Well, the globe warranty is called a lifetime warranty. Now, people automatically, so would I, ask the question, what is a lifetime warranty? Is it my life? Is it your life? Is it the life of the fire truck? Or what do you mean by lifetime warranty? What we mean by that is we don't make the cloth, we don't make the thread, we don't make the trim, that kind of thing, but we do make the product out of components. If something we've done, such as stitching or application, breaks down prior to the intended life, in other words, if the rest of the garment is performing just fine, is protecting the firefighter the way that it's supposed to, and something that we've done when we put the gear together broke down, we will repair it for the lifetime use. Now, the NFPA, of course, says that 10 years is the retirement time. Now, you know, that would be ideal. NFPA is a voluntary standard, but it is followed, pretty closely around the world for a bunch of different reasons: safety, liability, etc. So 10 years is usually when they get retired. But I've seen gear out in the field that are a lot older than 10 years, and if it's globe gear, it's still holding up very, very well. But it is a lifetime warranty against anything that we did when we put it together.
Another question I have is basically when it comes to, because I'm seeing a lot of people that have signed in from the oil and gas industry.
Right.
Do you have any recommendations when it comes to choosing gear for that particular industry? Is it, I mean, based on the gear that they would keep, as
Yeah.
opposed to what a full-time fire department might keep?
Yeah, I guess I would have an opinion, but remember, back to my little chart here, it is PPE, personal. This is my personal opinion, having talked to many people around the world about petroleum products, acids, and chemicals. One of the best examples I had was Marathon Oil out of Texas City, Texas, years ago. We're buying Globe product, and they were happy with it. They had a huge gas plume come out of one of their refinery areas, to the point where we saw vinyl siding on people's homes actually melting off where the plume would land. It's just something I remember over the years. But what I learned from that is what we need to do, or what I recommend, is leaning towards the outer shell that has the greatest resistance to acids and chemicals. And today in this industry, that would be the PBI product. PBI stands for polybenzimidazole. It's a fiber from PBI Industries, the old Hertz-Celanese from Germany, and it's combined with Kevlar and sometimes with some other fibers. And if you look at the lab results and the technical resistances, the PBI product does have the highest resistance to acids and chemicals. So I lean towards the acids and chemicals, even though it doesn't particularly say certain petroleum products.
The floor is open if anybody else who's participating has any questions. You all can go ahead and ask Rick.
Well, I put my I put my email address at the top here, rick.barr@msasafety.com. And I'm happy to get an email from anybody from IRP, always, as I do quite often, or from the field. And if I can send a swatch out or get you a bit of information from our laboratory, or put you in contact with one of our suppliers, like the folks that make the trim, or the people at W.L. Gore, the moisture barrier people, or the other materials, for technical results or test results direct from them, I'm happy to do it. Whatever you need. We're a service company. We look forward to getting you whatever we can in information.
Yeah, Rick, I don't mean to extend this too much, but I don't know if you could go into briefly a little bit about the material from Go and the importance of it being able to keep moisture out and get moisture and then also release the buildup of moisture.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, some of the older standard, well, the NFPA standard still deals with a criteria called TPP, which is thermal protected performance. That's the ability to resist direct flame and thermal load through your suit. Make sure that your skin is protected against, well, they actually tested against a second-degree burn. And of course, that's bad enough, but they can be even worse than that. So TPP is one thing we look at. But of course, the higher thermal resistance that you have, in other words, the thicker the products are that you're wearing, those sometimes hurt what they call in the industry THL. That's total heat loss. So, you know, it's a quandary. It's a catch-22. You're protected here in case you need it in a structural fire when you come in contact with under very hot conditions. But other than that, the garment, say in the Caribbean or the West Indies, can be very hot because the total heat loss is reduced because of how thick the garments are. So, you know, that doesn't exactly answer your question. Your question was, how important is it? Well, it's very important. But again, it's a personal opinion. I always lean towards thermal protection when necessary, because or when the question is asked, because if you're in one of those positions where you're caught and you need thermal protection and you need several more seconds to find an egress point, a stairwell or a window or a doorway to get out, you've got more seconds with the heavier TPP to find that egress, get out safely, and survive. Now, that said, unfortunately, like I said, it's the catch-22. More firefighters die from the cardio side, which is a heat-related injury or death, than they do the smoke and flame. So total heat loss, the ability to get the moisture that you're building up inside your system out, thus reducing your internal core temperature, is very important. You know, I can't say that any of these, if you were to do a risk management study, that any of the outer shell, moisture barrier, or thermal liner aren't equal in requirement. That's what the NFPA is for, and that's what NFPA studies and tells us that we need to find the fine line between adequate thermal protection and the ability to release moisture vapor from your suit so that you don't become ill from heat stress and cardio.
That answers my question for sure.
Yeah, probably more than you need to know.
All right. Yeah, I don't know if anybody's gonna has any questions, but again, we can you have your email address. Everybody here has myself and Roger's email address and phone numbers. So If anybody has any questions, they can contact us, and we can definitely reach out to Rick to answer your questions. All right.
That's right.
Rick, I just wanted to ask quickly because I know it's questions that come up on a regular basis. Everybody has different budgets in terms of how much money they have available to invest in what everybody knows is life and death equipment. And they would know that if they're going to spend money, they want to make sure that the people who are using it are protected. But at the same time, their purchasing capabilities are all different.
Right.
How then do you think about how to proceed without just thinking, look, I just want to be able to say I have some protective wear, and whatever is the cheapest is what I'll go with. How then do you marry what is really going to give you the protection against what money you have available, also related to how many people you have to purchase for, to make the correct decision as to what you should be looking at that you will say, okay, if this particular feature is part of it, it may cost a little bit more, but I'll get more protection and more value for the purchase. How do you look at how to approach it? Because there's so many different materials that you can opt for with regard to purchasing turnout gear, and each one has, I guess, different advantages. So you want to make sure that if you're going to invest in it, that it's going to be the correct thing for what your needs are and what your budget can afford. How then do you view that?
Well, a couple different ways. You know, we're going to Globe Manufacturing, you know, division of MSA is the largest manufacturer of protective clothing in the world. So we didn't get that way by cutting corners. That's the first thing I'll say. These things that I showed you earlier, just a few of them on the suit, are a bedrock for us. We won't deter from those comfort design features that make the firefighter feel better. And I've seen it over almost 3 decades. When we sit in a conference room and we talk about changes that we'll make to the gear, always before we end, there's 2 questions that are asked. One, is it going to make the firefighter more comfortable, lower stress, and easier to wear? If the answer isn't no, isn't yes rather, we don't do it. The other question is, will it make the gear last longer? Because it's expensive gear and it needs to be a very, very good value, or somebody's going to buy something less expensive. So the answer needs to be yes. It needs to fit better, feel better, and it needs to be a better value. That said, there are a lot of different materials that can sway the garment or the set of gear, coat and trouser, by $300 or $400. And you know, if you've got a fire department that's buying 10 sets, if it's $300 or $400, that equates to more sets. The only caution I would have is, given what the fire departments around the world have told us, I would err towards, if you had to, and again, a lot of times budgets mean you have to, and this is a personal equipment, but personal opinion. My thought is you err towards the best outer shell you can buy, because that is your primary level of defense against what you're doing in a very difficult position. And then you go I go the lightest thermal liner and the most breathable moisture barrier I can. Now, again, what's nice about Globe is all the design features that make the gear comfortable are available in all of our models. And a lot of people will say, why do you have all these models, Rick? Well, it's because you can't put all of what firefighters want. This is a very personal product. You can't put their personal opinions of what's important to them on one chassis. You have to be able to change things around so that everybody can get what they want in a set of gear. But again, we won't deter from the basic quality and longevity and best value of the product, but we can change the materials around a little bit to meet or get closer to meeting your budgetary needs. Now, you know, that's another whole hour and a half or 2 hours. I see my associate Gary Schofield's online here listening, and he would say that he would need 3 or 4 hours to talk about all these materials. But what I would suggest is that you get our catalog, you get the Tenkata catalog, you get a catalog from Safety Components. There's loads of information online about all these different materials. Study it a little bit and do a risk assessment. Risk assessments can come in the form of a 5 or 6 page document that we can make available to you, or risk assessment can be just what you've been doing for years, recognizing what your risks have been over the last decade or two when it comes to firefighting, and picking the right outer shell, right moisture barrier, right thermal liner, right design to meet your budget without reducing any of the protection that you need against the risk management result that you acquired. Hope that helps.
Well, that's great. And one of the things that we at IRP make sure we do is that we work with everybody to ensure that it's not just, well, a straightforward quote, but we work out to make sure that we know exactly what your needs are. If you're not sure, we make sure we can answer the questions, or we have backup from the manufacturers to be able to answer those questions. So at the end of the day, when they're making this, which is always a fairly sizable investment, that that it'll be satisfied and that it will work for them. One more thing, I don't know if before you get into it, we had mentioned that we would talk a little bit about the firefighting boots. So before we go, I'd just like a quick little mention about some of the features about the boots that you all offer.
Sure.
At Globe. I hope he hasn't gone too far.
Well, first of all, I want to point out that we're awfully proud of the fact that we've got the best-selling boot in this category in the world. This leather boot was designed by firefighters. We never were boot people. We've been 123 years, I think, building turnout gear. But after the tragedies of 9/11, we needed a boot that would interface with the bottom of our trouser. So we figured that we would look into licensing a boot from a manufacturer such as, oh, you know the names, Hakes, Pro Warrington, Thorogood, Black Diamond type folks that we had relationships with. But long story short, we found a manufacturer right here in a neighboring state called Magnum, and they were building gear or footwear for the military, and they were just about to ship their manufacturing capabilities overseas, like most foot gear people in America have done for 100 years. We found them. We sent a survey out worldwide called Voice of the Customer to firefighters, and we asked them what they wanted in a boot, because again, we weren't boot people. The number one thing that came back was they said they wanted to take this boot out of the box and they wanted it to fit comfortably instantly. They wanted it to be like their sneakers. Low or no break-in period. We achieved that. Nobody else can take a boot out of the box and bend it like this and have it feel comfortable immediately. Another thing that they asked for was they didn't want any steel. So we took the steel out of the footbed. We took the steel out of the toe. Took the steel out of the shank in the front, and it's all composites. Meets or exceeds what you're used to with steel, but doesn't transfer the heat or cold. And also, if something drops and hits you on the toe, it doesn't dimple or dent. It compresses and bounces back. Now, full disclosure, the products we use are no stronger than steel. They just react differently. They wanted more slip resistance. They wanted to be able to have what we call like a radial tire, siping on the bottom of the boot. We increased the slip resistance by 20% initially, and I believe it's even more now. Now that's not going to mean ice to you folks, obviously, but it could mean water and slippery polished cement that you might be working on. We tumble the leather here and in the back so that it's pre-tumbled, so it's broken in. We reinforce the pull-up straps, different than other manufacturers in the industry. We put pre-tumbled material around the calf area so it's comfortable, and we build a host of different designs. I think probably if you go through the factory in Maine and see how this boot is built, the most important thing or most impressive thing that I see about our boot is there's a moisture barrier in here to keep your foot dry. It's a Cross-Tech moisture barrier made by W.L. Gore, and we buy more of them than anybody else in the world, according to W.L. Gore. What's important about our boot is every one of these boots that has a moisture barrier in it, we test the moisture barrier for leaks before it leaves the factory. Something I didn't know, and I'll bet many of you don't. You know, the boots that leak, they actually leaked before they left the factory, because to put this thing together is very, very rugged, and you can rip the moisture barrier. What we do is we test every moisture barrier by blowing it up with air and putting it in what I would call a fish tank. It's a big plastic tank, and then a technician basically looks for bubbles. Again, it's not rocket science, but it gets the work done. The reason it's important is these boots won't leak before they leave, so we have much less returns back, unhappy customers that think that their boots are leaking prematurely. It isn't our favorite thing to do, because as you can imagine, when you're trying to build a boot, you don't want to take the booty, completely submerge it in water, get it soaking wet, and then have to wait for it to dry. But we do it because it's important and nobody else does. So, you know, please go on our website. You can see all our different models. This happens to be my favorite. It's called the Shadow XF. And, you know, again, it's personal. So we have 6 or 7 different models or more, and this is my favorite. All right, Roger?
Yep, that's good. I don't know if anybody had any personal questions they wanted to ask. Something maybe specific to your area of operation.
No. All right. Well, I think we've gone over the time a little bit, but thank you very much, Rick. I really appreciate.
I got all
the information, and I'd like to thank all of the participants for taking the time to join us.
For sure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're recording this, so we'll be sharing it with everyone, so they can always look at it later on if they missed anything. And yeah, so thanks a lot. Thank you very much, Rick. From everybody here at IRP, we really appreciate your time and the information.
Thank you for all you do at IRP. We appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, so I think that's it. So thank you again, everyone. Everybody be safe.
Thank you.
Yeah, everybody have a good day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.